In the summer of 1940, Adolf Hitler stood at the peak of power no man in Europe had ever reached. From the Atlantic coast of France to the forests of Poland, Nazi banners flew over conquered capitals. Paris had fallen. Belgium and Holland collapsed. Denmark surrendered in hours. Norway was seized from the sea and sky. Even mighty France, protected by the famous Maginot Line, had been shattered in just 6 weeks. Europe looked German. Railways carried Wehrmacht troops instead of tourists. German officers dined in palaces that once belonged to kings. Maps in Berlin were colored almost entirely gray, the color of the Reich. To the world, Germany appeared unstoppable. But empires rarely fall when they are weak. They fall when they believe they are invincible. Hitler's control of Europe was not built on stability. It was built on speed, fear, and shock. And all three would begin to fade. After France surrendered in June 1940, Hitler believed the war in the West was finished. Only one enemy remained: Britain. Across the English Channel, Winston Churchill refused to negotiate. While bombs fell on London, he told his people they would never surrender. Hitler needed air superiority before invading the island. Without control of the sky, German troops would be slaughtered crossing the sea. So he unleashed the Luftwaffe. Day after day, German bombers attacked British airfields, radar stations, and factories. The goal was simple: destroy the Royal Air Force. At first, the Germans were winning. Runways burned. Hangars collapsed. Pilots died faster than they could be replaced. But Britain had something Germany underestimated: radar and determination. British fighters rose again and again, even when exhausted. Teenagers flew against veterans. Planes returned riddled with bullets, yet pilots climbed back inside. Then Hitler made a mistake. Instead of continuing to destroy RAF bases, he shifted to bombing cities in retaliation for British raids on Berlin. The Blitz began. London burned. But the RAF survived. And because the RAF survived, Germany never invaded Britain. For the first time in the war, Hitler failed to control a battlefield. Europe noticed. By 1941, Hitler controlled most of Europe, but peace did not satisfy him. He wanted the East. He wanted land, oil, food, and the destruction of communism. On June 22, 1941, Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in history. Over 3 million German soldiers crossed into the Soviet Union. Tanks thundered forward. Planes smashed Soviet airfields. Entire Red Army divisions were encircled and destroyed. Hundreds of thousands became prisoners in weeks. At first, it looked like another miracle. Ukraine fell. Belarus collapsed. German troops advanced hundreds of miles. Hitler believed Moscow would fall before winter. But control over Europe began to stretch thin. Railways broke. Fuel ran short. Engines froze. Supply trucks couldn't keep up with advancing armies. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union refused to collapse. Factories were dismantled and moved east beyond German reach. New tanks rolled out faster than Germany could destroy them. Millions of fresh soldiers replaced the dead. When winter arrived, Germany stopped moving. And when Germany stopped, the Soviets attacked. The illusion of total control cracked again. While Germany fought in the east, another front pulled at its strength: North Africa and the Mediterranean. Hitler sent General Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, to rescue failing Italian forces. Rommel's tanks moved fast, brilliant, and aggressive, pushing the British back across the desert. But Africa was not Europe. Everything had to cross the sea. Every bullet, every liter of fuel, every spare part traveled through waters hunted by British submarines and aircraft. German supply ships burned before reaching port. Rommel could win battles, but not supply them. By late 1942, the Allies landed in Morocco and Algeria in Operation Torch. Suddenly Rommel faced enemies from east and west. At El Alamein, British forces stopped the Afrika Korps permanently. Africa was lost. Germany's control of Europe now faced invasion from the south. Italy began to wobble. The empire was bleeding from too many directions. If there was one place where Germany truly lost control of Europe, it was in a ruined city beside the Volga River, Stalingrad. In 1942, Hitler wanted oil from the Caucasus and prestige from capturing Stalin's namesake city. German armies pushed south with massive force. At first, everything worked. Cities burned. Soviet troops retreated. But Stalingrad refused to die. German bombers turned it into rubble, and that rubble became Soviet defense. Factories became fortresses. Apartments became sniper nests. Soldiers fought room by room, sometimes meters apart. The Germans advanced slowly, too slowly. While they fought inside the city, Soviet generals prepared something enormous outside it. In November, Soviet armies smashed into the weaker Axis flanks guarding the Germans. Romanian and Italian units collapsed. Within days, the German Sixth Army was surrounded, trapped. Hitler ordered them to hold. No retreat, no escape. Winter closed in. Planes could not supply enough food. Soldiers froze. Horses were eaten. Ammunition ran out. By February 1943, over 90,000 German soldiers surrendered. It was the first complete destruction of a German army. And with it, Germany lost control of the psychological war in Europe. From that moment, the Reich was no longer feared as invincible. It was hunted. While German armies struggled on the ground, the sky above Europe became a battlefield. American and British bombers flew day and night. Factories in the Ruhr, rail yards in Hamburg, oil plants in Ploesti. At first, Germany defended well. Flak guns filled the air. Fighters attacked bomber streams. But numbers changed everything. By 1943, Allied air power exploded. Thousands of bombers crossed Germany regularly. Hamburg burned in firestorms. Berlin shook nightly. Oil production collapsed. Trains stopped running. German industry suffocated. Without fuel, tanks could not move. Without transport, soldiers could not reach fronts. Germany still occupied Europe, but it could no longer control it efficiently. Power requires logistics, and Germany's logistics were dying. Occupied Europe did not remain silent. In France, Poland, Yugoslavia, Greece, and the Netherlands, resistance movements grew. Sabotage destroyed rail lines. Bridges exploded. German officers were assassinated in streets. Partisans tied down entire German divisions that were needed elsewhere. In Yugoslavia, Tito's guerrillas controlled mountains. In Poland, underground armies prepared for revolt. In France, the Maquis waited for Allied return. Germany's grip weakened from inside. The empire was being eaten alive. Hitler knew invasion was coming. He ordered massive defenses built along Europe's western coast, the Atlantic Wall, concrete bunkers, mines, guns, obstacles in the sea. But walls don't fight, soldiers do. And Germany no longer had enough trained soldiers, fuel, or aircraft to guard every beach properly. While Hitler trusted concrete, the Allies planned deception, fake armies, fake radios, fake tanks. Germany watched the wrong coast, and that mistake would destroy their control forever. By early 1944, Germany still occupied much of Europe on maps, but in reality, control was already slipping through Hitler's fingers. In France, German commanders sensed something coming. Trains ran at night without lights. Radar stations watched empty seas. Soldiers were nervous. Allied bombers had destroyed bridges, fuel depots, and rail hubs across northern France. Entire divisions were stranded without supplies. The Luftwaffe, once feared across the continent, barely existed in the West anymore. Many German pilots had died over Britain and Russia. Others had no fuel to train. Hitler still believed his Atlantic Wall would stop any invasion. Concrete, steel, and mines stretched across thousands of miles of coastline. Huge guns pointed at the sea. Obstacles waited beneath waves. But walls only delay. They do not decide wars. Germany's fate would be decided on a single morning. On the evening of June 5, 1944, southern England was alive with quiet tension. Airfields were packed with aircraft. Harbors overflowed with ships. Soldiers wrote final letters home. Chaplains walked among men who pretended not to be afraid. Across the channel, German officers slept, believing the weather was too rough for invasion. They were wrong. Shortly after midnight, the sky above France filled with engines. Thousands of Allied aircraft crossed the coast. Paratroopers sat frozen inside transports as green lights blinked. Anti-aircraft fire rose into darkness like angry stars. When the doors opened, men jumped into history. They landed in fields, rivers, rooftops, forests, and enemy camps. Some drowned in flooded marshes. Some fought alone all night. Some died before touching the ground. But they cut wires. They seized bridges. They confused German command. By the time German generals woke, the countryside was already hostile. As the sun rose on June 6th, the sea turned black with ships. Battleships opened fire. Shells screamed overhead and smashed into German bunkers. Smoke swallowed the coastline. Then landing craft raced forward. Inside each boat, soldiers held rifles with white knuckles. Waves slapped metal hulls. Some prayed. Some stared. Some whispered names of people they loved. Then the ramps fell. At Omaha Beach, death waited. German machine guns ripped through water and flesh. Boats exploded. Men vanished in seconds. Officers fell before issuing orders. Units were shattered instantly. Survivors hugged obstacles for cover. The tide rose around bodies. For a moment, invasion nearly failed. But courage is contagious. A sergeant crawled forward. An engineer cut wire. A medic dragged wounded through fire. Small groups formed. They climbed cliffs under bullets. They destroyed bunkers one by one. By noon, Omaha was alive with Allied soldiers. On other beaches, progress came faster. British and Canadian troops pushed inland. Tanks rolled ashore. Artillery followed. By nightfall, Europe had been breached. Germany had lost the coast. Landing was only the beginning. France fought back. Normandy's countryside was full of hedgerows, thick walls of earth and vegetation. Each field became a fortress. German snipers hid everywhere. Mines waited beneath grass. American and British troops learned a new kind of war. They fought for farms. They fought for roads. They fought for villages that were erased by artillery. Progress was slow and bloody. Germany still had experienced soldiers, and they used terrain brutally. But something had changed. They were no longer attacking. They were reacting. Control had shifted. Once the Allies broke through Normandy, speed returned. General George S. Patton's Third Army surged forward like lightning. Tanks raced across France. Fuel convoys ran day and night. Bridges were captured before Germans could destroy them. German units collapsed under pressure. Retreat turned into chaos. Supply columns were bombed from the air. Communication failed. Paris was liberated. Crowds flooded streets. Women cried. Men kissed soldiers. Flags reappeared after 4 years underground. Germany no longer controlled France. And without France, Germany could not control Western Europe. Hitler refused to accept defeat. In December 1944, he gathered his remaining armored forces secretly. He chose the Ardennes forest, where the Allies believed no major attack could happen in winter. At dawn, German artillery shattered snow-covered silence. Tanks pushed through fog. American units were surprised. lines bent backward, forming the famous Bulge. For a moment, Germany hoped to split Allied armies and force negotiations. But Germany no longer had the strength it once did. Fuel ran out, roads clogged. Allied air power returned when weather cleared. Patton turned his army north in record time and smashed into German flanks. At Bastogne, surrounded Americans refused surrender. Nuts. The German offensive bled out in frozen forests. It was the last time Hitler's army attacked in the West. After the Bulge, Germany only retreated. By early 1945, Allied armies stood on Germany's border. The Rhine River was the final natural defense. Hitler ordered it held at all costs. But Germany had no air superiority, no fuel, and exhausted soldiers. When Allied forces captured the bridge at Remagen intact, everything collapsed. Tanks crossed. Infantry followed. Germany's heart was open. Cities fell one by one. The Ruhr industrial region was encircled. Hundreds of thousands of German soldiers surrendered. Control of Europe was no longer slipping. It was gone.